And welcome to another day in the Milky Way, everybody. And as you see, I was a crazy day, and I put together everything pretty fast. And tonight we got Giant, as you all know him. So no
hello,
picture.
everybody.
Yeah, there you go. Say hello. And
hello, everybody. Yeah, I got no picture. I get cut off quite often, so at this time it's just going to be my voice.
That's all right. Don't worry. I'm sure, it's better than having computer problems and then going down with the ship kind of thing. I mean, I don't know if you remember Delaney. She was on the other night, and she was talking and doing, and about every third word you could, you miss. And then she finally broke up and off the thing she went. But hey, it was good that she came on. She was just working with her phone, and at least you got a clear signal with and everything's working good. That's the best.
Technicality problems are an issue, and they seem to be getting worse right now at these times. But I'm very close to the technical hub here in the Bay Area, so
there you go.
Yeah, maybe they want to attack me more, or they'll allow my voice to come through only. I don't know. There's a lot of involvement there in the Bay Area, so
yeah,
we'll get into that, I think, through the conversation a little bit.
Oh, that's all right. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Well, anyway, sorry everybody. I see Nina the Mystics in the house. Hey, Nina, I wish you should send me an email. I'll send you a link and you could read a card for tonight. I don't have a card reader. But anyway,
that'd be nice. I love it.
Yeah. Huh?
I love when they read the cards, man.
Awesome. I was having Darth going to read a card, but he couldn't make it. And so I needed a card reader. Nina, if you want to send me an email, I'll put my thing up and I'll wait. It's the milkywaysoultribe at Gmail. I'll send you a link to the Zoom, and I would appreciate it if you could come and read a card. So I'm driving the bus and I don't read cards. So anyway, let's go through all the people we got in the house right away here. We got David Castle, Deborah Truex. Hello. We got Deborah Sloan, Mandy Moo from Down Under. And we got, Milky's mom, Brenda. Hello. She is wonderful. I tell you, I like when she comes around. And we got Julianne Payne, also from Down Under there. Our spelling alchemist, Jules. Yes. We got and we got Delaney Pearl Jones. Delaney, hello. I sent you an email. Anyway, we got Michelle Can-Am Free, and I believe she's in Wisconsin. That's quite the state. I live there. I used to live there. We got Nina the Mystic, and we got Nina. I'm not cam ready. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay, well that's all right. Nina says she can't do the thing. But anyway, no card tonight unless somebody else wants to come on. Send me an email and you can come on and read a card. I need a card reader for tonight. Let's see what else is there going on. But anyway, okay. Well, while everybody's piling in, so tonight we are going to. Why don't you tell us what we're all going to talk about here with the conjunction of the planets?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Great Conjunction. I believe it was a couple days ago where Trina was on.
Yep.
And Phoenix, Rainbow Phoenix, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so they were talking about the Great Conjunction. They went into a little bit of the details. I believe the Star of Bethlehem, and I don't know if they touched on the Great Chronocraters, but it's something I've been studying for quite a while, so I just wanted to put, a few more levels of understanding into there, and so we can look at it with a little bit of clearer light and understand probably most likely what's coming from these types of energies.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to pull up some stuff here so that we can look at this. And I think I can do this. Let me see if I can figure this out. You keep talking and I'll get this up. I don't know if I got the paper up. Yeah. Well, wait a minute. You just keep doing. I got a thing here. It talks about the mystery of the planets. It's I'll just. It ain't sharing. I don't know why it isn't sharing.
Okay.
But anyway, I think maybe
you're trying to share some pictures right now so that people can kind of see.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to do. Trying to get the picture thing so that I can, get it all up there. And
okay. Yeah. Sorry.
You keep describing it, and I'll put the stuff up. I'm driving the bus.
Yeah. I was trying to provide that. Sorry, guys. Technical difficulties, or I get cut off from the internet quite often because of different issues. I've things I look into. I'm sure are all kinds of different ways of looking at it. But I kind of wanted to mention at first. There's kind of I look at things in an astro theological point of view, and I notice a lot of symbols and signs, and things like that from God, which are weird. And there's a lot of connections between all of us. Some of you out there have probably heard me ask you what your birthday is and give you feedback on that. So a lot of astro theological information that I've been collecting for over 23 years, probably longer. I've looked into multiple things, but that's one of the things I've been focusing on. But my son is a Gemini, and I know that Milky was a Gemini, right?
Yeah.
Because I asked him. Mm-hmm. And so my son likes to call his mother Milky because that's where he gets his milk from. And so his mother is Milky's mother, and he's a Gemini also. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting parallel. There's a lot of those weird kind of fractal parallels that we all have with each other, one way or another, that I noticed because I pay attention to those things. So anyways, I just thought it was just weird. It was something that dawned on me the other day. Milky's mother and, my wife and my child are connected to that in a weird way.
Oh, wow.
So,
that's very,
because that's kind of what she's considered as Milky's mother. He loves her, and he calls it specifically Milky. He doesn't call it like milk or anything. He calls her Milky because that's where he gets his milk from. Anyway, I guess to focus on the great conjunction or the grand conjunction, right? And there's a connection with this in movies, history, all kinds of stuff. As Rainbow Phoenix was mentioning that this is theoretically connected to the Star of Bethlehem, right? And the three magi, and what maybe the in between the lines, the symbology behind it is not exactly what we have been brought to believe, but there's a secret that is necessary because certain things have to unravel in this world, right? And so there is secrets that are necessary, I would say, as a test for humanity.
Yeah.
Right. We can't just be given a present if we're bad kids. In essence. All right. There's kind of a symbolic representation of that with Christmas and Santa Claus, and he knows whether you've been naughty or nice, right? So if you're just given the information and how to figure out the system from the get-go, there's no real test, and there's no way of evaluating if your energy is something that needs to be passed on through evolution type system, right? I mean, if we pay attention to nature, we see that there's evolving that happens. There's always a process, you know what I mean? Whether you're making whatever product, you know, or nature is making that product. It's creating diamonds or whatever, right? There's always a pressure and a process that needs to be done. You can evaluate exacts, and then it comes up to an exact calculation that has a total at the end, and that's it every time, you know. 2 + 3 will equal 5 every time. If it doesn't, then there's something wrong, right? So in essence, what I'm trying to kind of frame here and put down a foundation for is that you do have to be in that mindset that there is a process to this world of evaluating itself and then coming to a conclusion that has to occur so that you can come out with a certain result. And I think that result, in essence, is, you know, thought up and dictated by whatever we want to call it, the Almighty, ahead of time. But it has to go through a certain set process to get that end result that it wants. And therefore, the process needs to go through the changes, but there's a filtration process that's always at the end, right? You filter out and you get more fine-tuned, a more purified object at the end, right? And so if you're following Revelations, you're following really any spiritual system, that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to get to that purity at the end, right? So a way of looking at it is that astrotheologically, or just astrologically, is that the planets Saturn and Jupiter have something to do with dictating that process, that they come about every so often, right? And the numbers aren't exact, you know, like I have it written down. I've been writing it down for years. I can tell you exactly all the different astrological signs that the different presidents were when they either died or assassinated in office, and who was the president before and after. And we'll go through those details and everything to kind of show you that there's an actual pattern there. And it's very clear once you start seeing that there's always a pattern there, that there's some sort of process that we are going through, but where we fit in that process is going to change depending on our actions. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And those are the things that we're going to be judged by. So we're allowed that, in essence, free will, but in the end, the answer is always going to be the answer. It's always going to be the truth, no matter what. It's just who is going to fulfill that, you know, diamond. Who's going to be a part of what that diamond is just going to be dependent on our choices and how we pass our tests or not. Because if we're all the same thing, it doesn't matter in the end anyways. The stuff that's discarded just needs more pressure, needs more refinement. It'll get to the diamond status eventually also. In the end, we will all get to the diamond status. But will you get to it now or not? And do you end your physical life at this point? Or do you move on into the next stage is more of the question. And this is what we're going to have to kind of discuss in this, is that if you are worried about whether you're going to survive or not through this period, is going to depend on how close you are to that diamond status or not. But don't worry at all, because there is no death, no matter what. In the end, there's no death of your soul. There's no death to God, and you are all part of God. But will you physically be allowed? Are you fruitful enough? And are you not a weed, in essence, or will you not be considered a weed, to pass through this gate that's here? And that's the important thing, because you know, just like quarantining people and stuff like that, we got to see all these processes, is that you're not going to pass through a gate. You're not going to be able to get unquarantined if you're ill, and you're going to pass your illness on to the next people, in essence. You see what I'm saying? And so all things need to be filtered out that are not part of the purest form of what it is that that process needs to get out of it. And so these process times that are shown to be associated with Saturn and Jupiter and their conjunction and their communication is the times when humanity is getting filtered, in essence. And this is a big one right now, a very important one, because we're moving from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. We're not just moving into a different phase of being in the age of Pisces, which there's lots of these different types of phases, and they actually change through from the age from the minus 6 BC, so 6 BC, right?
Yep.
To 1981, there's different increments of phases that change of the Great Conjunction. So there's a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that happens every about 20 years, and it's not exact. Yeah, every 20 years, and then in between there is an opposition to Jupiter and Saturn, so they're on the opposite sides of the astrological chart. And I believe Trina was asking on a previous one, like, what is the opposition to Sagittarius? And the opposition to Sagittarius is Gemini, just so everybody knows. They hold they're opposing ways of thinking about things. So Sagittarius is very strong in its way of getting stuck on absolutes. And Gemini is of two minds, that there's two sides to everything and that it all needs to be, kind of measured out, right? And you'll see that, you'll notice that in all the opposition sides of the zodiac, is that there's always this like opposing symbolism or characteristics, but opposites do attract, and they should be trying to work with each other to really find that middle point. And the middle point is always the Earth in the center. But getting back to what happens in these Saturn Jupiter conjunctions is that they have many different phases that happen within an aeon, within an age. So the age of Pisces actually started in 6 BC. It can be argued. It could be argued on the details of exactly that. The reason I say that is if you look closely and you look at the charts, you'll see that Pisces was phasing into a start at that point. It was becoming the master energy behind these Saturn Jupiter conjunctions. And then what they do is they'll go through the elements. So it went from water. It started in a water sign around that time, and then you see this Jesus character pop up, right?
Yeah.
And then as every about 200 years of interval, you'll start seeing the next sign, next element phase in. So if you go around the zodiac signs, you'll see that. Let's start at Aries. You'll see that it goes fire, and then earth, which is Taurus, and then air, which is Gemini, and then water, which is Cancer, right? And then what does it go back to? It goes back to fire, which is Leo, and then earth, which is Virgo, and then Libra, which is air, and then where was I? Libra, which is air, and then Scorpio, which is water, right? Yeah. So it's going to do this every time. And a lot of people pointed out, is like, oh, this seems like the combustion cycle. If you look at an engine, right? This seems like a way that you would make combustion, And then what does an engine do is it moves parts, right? And so a lot of things are you know, microcosms or fractals or another way of thinking of a parallel way of perceiving something else. And so there is no one way of thinking about it. Actually, technically, the whole reason behind the number 33 is that there's technically 33 angles that are very important angles around a 360-degree view of any object. That if you stand in any of those 33 angles, you're going to see an aspect of that object that is different enough from the other degree, the other angle, that you get a different perspective on it. So let's say you're taking a cat or a dog or any kind of object or animal or person or whatever it is. There's not one way of thinking about it. Like a cat is a cat, but it has a female aspect, right? Just like a dog is a dog, but it also has a masculine aspect, right? And then they say Venus is women and Mars is men. There's technically, if you sit there and think about it, there's 33 good angles, points of view of looking at each object in this world and giving it some sort of energetic significance of that view. You see what I'm saying? So it's understanding things in a three-dimensional way, in that 360 view, by knowing very key points of view around that circle to really understand the object. And it's like that the three blind men feeling an elephant story. I don't know if you ever heard that.
Yes, I did. Yeah, they all, one grabbed the trunk, one grabbed the tail, one grabbed the leg, and I got a tree. No, I got a snake.
Exactly. So this is the process that we're going through, humanity, right?
Yes.
Is now we have a time period given to us by technology, which we can get into whether it's good or bad. There's always a good and bad at everything.
Absolutely.
That is allowing us to share as the blind men the information that we found on what these objects are. And some people get hung up on maybe one or two aspects of what the object is, and then they're arguing that that's what the object is, rather than realizing that that is an aspect of what the object is, but that's not truly what it is. And you can be misled on what it is that you need to understand about that object because you feel like you struck gold by finding an aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to get bogged down in the one aspect, but you do want to understand it fully. So it's good to repeat it, and it's good to teach, right? To teach that information and put it out there, but don't get stuck that if someone has some kind of opposing viewpoint, that it might just be the 180-degree viewpoint of it, but it is still a valid viewpoint of the same thing. But neither one of them are correct because they're just feeling a piece of the elephant, right?
Yeah.
So you need that 360 view, and I think people, in most part, especially, within the group, are realizing that, there's many levels to understanding every one of these objects that we're dealing with in this world. And the deeper we understand it, the better off we are. And just be open to that. You know what I mean? Don't limit yourself in believing that one aspect of it is going to save you, because, there's a lot of viewpoints that you can come up with on that one aspect that are not true. Like you said, they're feeling leg and stuff and they think it's a tree, right? If you really think it's a tree, that could steer you the wrong way, in essence, right? So what Saturn and Jupiter do is they're evaluating an energy. We were speaking about this before we went live, and what it is that the planets are in astro-theological ways of thinking, in a way. Not that everybody that has a astro-theological mindset is going to maybe agree with this, but I think the majority of them understand this level of thinking about it, is that each planet is, in essence, creating its own energy.
Mm-hmm.
It has an energy, whether you want to, go back to the origin and say, hey, it all comes from the sun in the first place, but they have their own energy, and then the sun is constantly emitting energy, but it all comes from the source, which is the sun in the first place. And we have a solar system that we live in, and there's planets involved, and there's a reflection that's happening off of these planets, kind of like striking a bell, and they create a ring, and they have their own ring, they have their own mass, they have their own energetics to its structure and all these things, right? Mm-hmm. So the sun is emanating energy that created all these planets, including ours, and we're all creations of it in essence. And then these energies are moving in circles that are various to each other, right? Mm-hmm. They're moving in a cycle around the sun, and they get into different positions, and depending on those angles and positions, you get a different angle of frequency, a different bounce, a different distance of that frequency needing to travel from the bounce to you, to the earth, right?
Yeah.
And so then you're getting, different energetics at different times, depending on what phase we're in, how we're cycling around, and where those planets are at. And so astrologers have looked at that and figured out all these different anomalies, or things that keep on consistently happening every time these planets are in this position and this position to each other. You see what I'm saying? And so over thousands of years, they've come up with, like, you can almost predict what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can.
The same thing. Well, after the same. So okay. So what I'm getting is, if you would see me, I'd be writing all kinds of stuff down on my little pad. I can. Yeah. So here's the thing. So all the planets have different frequencies, and as they go around, it's like they're like, we'll just say, a musical instrument. One is playing the piano, one is playing the violin, one is playing the trumpet, and one's playing the drums, right?
Yeah.
And one. Okay, so when they're scattered out all over the place in the universe, they're playing, and you can hear them just fine, and blah blah blah, right? But as they get together, they interact with each other, and now you look at the drums and the trumpets behind it, and you can't hear the trumpet as good with the drums in front of it, or the sound conflicts or cancels each other out, or makes the sound louder, like when you're listening to the music. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect analogy, is to understand it as a chorus of information that's constantly hitting us, and depending on how these instruments are playing, depending on where it is that they're at, how they're receiving this energy from the original source, which is the sun, how it's being reflected, how far that is away from us, right? How far that instrument player is from us when we're sitting in the front row seat or whatever, right? Like all those sounds are being reverberated in a different angle, at a different distance, at a different tone, at a different time, and all these things. So we take those things into consideration by charting these things over time. And so when they've charted all these different frequencies at different distances and all this stuff, they see different interactions, different things that have happened in our society, in our world, how humanity reacts to it, how different people that come out at different times when they're birthed interact with this world differently, right? And there's so many variables, there's so many details to it. It's not as simple as just looking at your zodiac sign. That's just in general kind of thing, because it has to do with your position to the sun only. Right.
So why when some people read your sign or your chart, they got to know exactly when you were born, at what time, what place, the whole 9 yards, right?
Yes, exactly. Because it shows exactly where at that place on Earth that you were, if you're looking from that point of view towards those planets, if those alignments were there, or
Yeah, they can go back go back and see what the alignment was at that point in time. And then what it is okay, so now I read somewhere, I love history stuff. So I read somewhere that like archaeologists, they dig up dirt and they dig up pots and pottery and things like that. And they they dig up stuff and they can tell kind of how old it is or when or where it was made because of the magnetism in the dirt, because all dirt has a little bit of metal in there, and as the things align or the magnetism at the time align those pieces of metal, in a certain direction or a certain spot, and then they can tell exactly, when that pottery was made. And so in the same way, you're saying that, okay, so I was born in April on the 29th and blah, 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 blah. So then they say, okay, well, those planets were making this frequency and you were in this spot and you soaked up that frequency as those two were playing at the same time.
Yes. You're the manifestation of that type of energy that God was manifesting at that time. That chorus, that orchestra was playing that music at that time, and forever you are locked into that dance. And you're gonna make actions and reactions that are based on that. So the environment is the accumulation of all the other energies, and then you're the reaction to all those other energies in this world.
Wow.
Essentially.
Well, that makes things a lot more sense. Yeah. And so now as these planets, like you said, they're aligning and they are together. Now Jupiter and Saturn will be coming together, correct? And this is making things, is this like making things out of balance?
No, what it most likely is from studying what these planets do, right? Astrologers that understand these more historic studies that have been put into place for thousands of years, and when they're following it, they give these key energetic signatures to these planets. And what it is that Jupiter is a benefic planet. It's the largest benefic planet that there is, and Saturn is the opposite. It's a malefic planet. It's a judgment planet. And these don't, automatically mean like good or bad just because it's malefic. What it is it's a necessary energetic force to have opposing energies in this world that are, extremely benefic and then malefic. And malefic is more of an ending kind of energy. It has to stop things that are out of control. You know what I mean? If we didn't have things ever stop anything out of control, you don't have existence. And just like you don't have anything that's benefic, even starting it, then you don't have existence. So you need these two opposing kind of energies. But when they come into conjunction with each other, what they are doing is that they're communicating their two sides. There's a court hearing being happening in essence. There's something that needs to be figured out about this last engagement with humanity. And did they learn their lessons, or what did they do? And every individual is going to be judged differently too. You see what I'm saying? It's all dependent. So, but we're being judged as a generation, and we're being judged as individuals all at the same time by these two planets. So and it's always happening.
Oh yeah. And so now, okay, so you said that they happen on like about 200-year intervals, and I know
they're 20 year intervals, and then they're in an opposition every 10 years. Yeah. But there's a, if I don't want to get too nerdy about it, but I have writings. I goes back for 15, 20, 25 years, writings on the details of when one of these phased in and out. And there's a great conjunction, and then there's a regular Saturn Jupiter conjunction, and people don't understand it. Well,
okay.
sorry.
So that's what I wanted to ask. I think, okay. So I'm looking at my notes here. Sorry. So, let me get back to this. Okay. So these are the cycles. I love history. So this is good. So you got the charts and the planets, and I can do the history part. So as these happen in these, 10-year, 20-year cycles, 200-year cycles, I know that in history, and you probably do too already, that in every 400 years there's a big cycle of turnover. Every 200 years there's kind of a turnover, and as we know that every about 20 and 10 or 20 years there seems to be this big turnover. You know what I mean? I mean, we have such a short lifespan in a matter of speaking that 10 years to us is just it seems like a lifetime sometimes. And you get back 20, 30, 40 and you say, oh my God, 50 years. And it's like, wow, some young kid will say, wow, you're really old. It's like, yeah, you'll get there someday. And then, a few more years later, 10 or 20 years later, you're dying. And it's like, well, that was over quick. Whereas the planets and the stars and these, cycles are hundreds and hundreds of years. And to us, that just seems like, foreverness. And so what I'm saying is, so we look back 10 years, and if we look back 10 years from today, the amazing things that have changed in our lives, and then look back 20 years, and the year, 2000, I mean, we were just getting started with cell phones and computers. I remember, it was just, they were like the big deal. Is like, ooh, look at this. It's kind of cool. People were getting on chat rooms and things like that. And the computers were so slow. You'd type something in and you'd have to wait. And then if you go back, the 200 years ago, holy cow, 200 years ago, what were we doing 200 years ago? There was a horse and buggy and Indians running around. Yeah. Low tech. Everything was really low tech, So the advancements are coming into these intervals. Do you believe that too? Like you said, they give out that new frequency, and they either advance us or we retard ourselves backwards or something. I'm not sure on that.
Yeah. So really what's happening is there's a time propagation that's happening, right? There's a process that's pushing us through time. There's an element of energy that's governs that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And this thing is referred to as Saturn, right? It's pushing us through time and pushing us through a test and a filter, and then has to come up with a judgment of how to proceed and filter out the wrong and keep the righteous and that kind of mindset. But Christian religion is the seventh day, or the time of rest, right? Is an indicator of when that time period comes to a judgment point, right? Yep. And the reason that it's 7 is that 7 is basically an L. You'll notice there's a lot of commonalities with right angles, with L's and R's. People have a problem pronouncing the L's and R's, even me as a child. And a lot of children and a lot of languages don't pronounce their L's and R's very well. And that's because a right angle is semi-unnatural, but it's a resting point, and it causes issues with the roll of the tongue and everything like that. But we'll get into that in maybe some other time. But the 7 is really a symbolic indicator of Saturn and time and all that, because Saturn is actually the two words sat and then turn, right? So you sit, you rest, and then you turn to the opposite way. And so there's a bouncing. Every wave has to bounce off of something. And then, what's essentially happening with the golden ratio and everything else is that it's trying to find balance. Everything in existence is really trying to seek balance, but different things and different frequencies take longer to do that depending on their span of when it is that they bounce, that they find their borders, right? And the borders are really defined by Saturn. Saturn is the one that is restrictions. It is a stopping point. You see what I'm saying? So it forces you to stop, to rest, to sit, think about it, process, and then turn the opposite way and try to seek balance again. And then if you go past the mark and you don't hit the bullseye, you're going to eventually hit another wall, and you're going to sit, and you're going to rest, and you're going to turn. And this is why it's Saturn, and this is why time is shown in a frequency, bouncing back and forth. You see what I'm saying? It's something that's necessary to give you borders, and then eventually, over time, over many mistakes, figuring it out. Just like Edison had to figure out the light bulb over thousands of tries, right?
Yes.
Humanity obviously didn't get it perfect at first, and it was never intended to get perfect at first, because if you already have perfection at the very beginning, then there's no reason for existence in the first place, and then you just don't even have anything. You know what I mean? So everything has to start off from a trying point, and it has to be chaotic and whatever. It's just random. You know, you come into life as a child. It's very random, all the things you do. You're almost like trying to kill yourself all the time because you're trying to figure it out, right? So just taking these things into mind is that's what we're doing. We're constantly processing towards perfection. We're trying to seek balance, and that's what all of us are doing in this world. Is we are aiming for something, and then eventually you figure out that aim isn't correct. You know, you hit rock bottom, whatever it is. You're hitting something, and it's either you hit that wall so hard that you die, or you turn around and figure it out and try to go back towards the other way. And then you might miss the target again, and you're going to hit something else. Eventually, you're going to start figuring it out by hitting the walls that, you know, just like a rat in a maze that gets shocked if he tries to jump the wall, you have to go down the maze, right? This is the labyrinth of the world, right? This is the labyrinth of the filter. And this is what the Buddhists talk about, is that don't get caught on attachments, because the attachments are pieces of the filter that are going to cling to you, or you're going to cling to, and you're not going to make it through the filter, right? So your judgment should always be on making it through the filter and letting go of the attachments. And that means any one way of looking at anything. You want to see it in so many ways that you learn that you don't need to be attached to it. It's a part of the process, right? And then you can move through better. And that's just kind of a general, you know, statement or whatever.
I totally get you. There was I know that's what slows a lot of people up, is they're attached to a lot of things. Like when I came out here to North Dakota to get a job, you know, I had to leave, you know, everybody and everything I knew behind and start out on a new journey and adventure. And you know, I had to leave a lot. I literally came with my clothes on my back, you know, and came out here and just almost start a new life. And I left everything back there, and those were my attachments. And you know, they're still dragging me down because I still have them there. And I haven't been able to let a lot of that go. And but I notice a lot of people, they wouldn't even let that stuff go, even though they knew there was better jobs out here, or they could change their life. They didn't want to leave anything behind. They were so attached to that. They would rather stay miserable and in poverty and not change anything because because they were so attached to everything and their family and things, So I get what you're saying. And that's what it's gonna. This main theme of this attachment is what Saturn and Jupiter is gonna do to humanity. Is it's gonna force your detachment from things that you may not understand, that aren't serving you anymore, and they're not serving. The main thing is from God's eye point of view. You know, there's a bird's eye point of view, and then there's God's eye point of view.
you set yourself into God's eye point of view, you can look at things detached, and you can see that, what is the most beneficial thing for humanity as a whole. And there's a lot of people that their viewpoint and their attachments will actually be non-beneficial for humanity in the long run.
And that's exactly it, because they're stuck in that rut. I mean, I've been there, and because of my attachments, I kept doing the same thing over and over and over and never going anywhere. I felt like I was just spinning my wheels. And I see that with so many people. And it's like, sometimes you have to let go of things in order, even though you don't want to, in order to move forward. And, regardless if it's things or beliefs or whatever it is, that's what you have to do because you'll never move forward. Is that what you're saying there?
That is exactly what I'm saying. And this is the thing, is that, time in these elements, this duality, is a part of existence, and people need to accept it, that it's not something that they're going to be able to break. And you chose to be a part of this world to help it progress through different energy points. But you have to make sure that if you want to move forward in it, that you have to be fruitful. You can't be what is considered a weed, and you need to look at all your actions to make sure that they're not something that is hindering the progress of God through time, right? It's using it to test us and to validate a push of our energy. You know what I mean? Like it's pushing, and that's why it needs so many different phases of what would seem like, how a motor works or whatever. You see what I'm saying? Like we have a fire sign, an earth sign, air sign, and a water sign, and then it goes into another phase of the same thing, and then another phase of the same thing. So it's constantly changing these different phases and working itself through this cycle to be this locomotive that's rolling its way down the tracks. You see what I'm saying? Like it needs this movement, and it needs to change the dynamics, and it needs all these different types of energy and coming in at different times to have just slightly different aspects and stuff like that, because this is continuing that movement. But if any of these energies aren't doing their duty, if they're not playing their part and stuff like that, and they become, somewhat mutated or toxified by the environment, then it's just showing to God, like, okay, there's an issue with this energy and this combination, and so I have to take that and I have to process that information, right? Because people think about it as a program that we're living in or whatever, right? Yeah. And I think it's more of, realistically, is what it is that we're creating programs that were similar to this. And that we shouldn't be in the mindset that we're just living in a computer program. We're just creating mimics of what it is that God has done, and we just call them computer programming. You see what I'm saying? So it's actually we should have a reverse thought on that we're just copying, we're mimicking nature, we're mimicking God, and God works like this because he's trying to set us through a program to create an outcome, essentially, and we're just trying to manifest something similar and put it in our terms and stuff like that. But everything is just symbolic. Words are just symbolic, and we're just mimicking what it is that we are, that we come from. You know what I mean? So it's not really a simulation. It's more of we're creating simulations to mimic reality, our existence.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, here I got a question from Steve from Slightly Slanted Sleuth. He says, he thinks the universe is an afflection of man, or the other way around.
If I think that the universe is just a reflection of us,
reflection of man, or the other way around. Yeah, the universe is a
so
reflection.
remember the 180 that I was telling you about. It's both.
It's both.
It's both. because there is no division in essence, right? We're all God, and we will all, in the end, go back to being God, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, but the whole point of God creating existence wasn't just to get back to itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's an experiential purpose to existence. The whole point in the first place is to break itself into multiple parts and have interactions. And a lot of those things are dualistic interactions where they have confrontation and war and all kinds of stuff, but they're all just emotional, experiences. They're just experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
So God can either have zero experiences
Mm-hmm.
and stay where it's at and not do anything, or can have existence and have experiences for a certain amount of time until it plays out all the possible experiences and then go back to rest. You see what I'm saying? And this is what Vishnu is said to be doing, is that he's closing his eyes, having a dream and having existence, and then he'll wake up and he'll go back to living in the world that he's at that higher level, and then he'll go back to sleep again. And there's this breathing that happens, right? So this whole thing that we need to not look past is we're living in the experience of Vishnu's dream. We're living in the experience of God's dream in the first place. And we're all here to have an experience. And there's always a final boss. There's always a reason for the existence to keep it interesting, or there's no, or it defies the whole purpose of having existence. You have to have the opposing characteristics and everything, right? So,
because you without creating things, I mean, if the God thought there is perfect, there's nothing he could do that wouldn't be perfect. And therefore it wouldn't be a challenge to do anything. Like you said, he might as well just go back to sleep. But as long as people are creating and, we're creating, we're having our ups and downs, and then we create things to fix the downs to make them go up, it makes it interesting. And we're constantly creating and keeping going. Now here Steve said something like mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, gender, mentalism, the rest in turn, right turn on, something like that. All right turn on, something like that. I guess mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, gender, mentalism, the rest in turn, right on. I don't know what that means, but
it sounds like he's speaking of some sort of a phase that he's reading out of. I wouldn't know exactly what book that he's reading out of, but it's information that he's gotten from some source, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is this is the thing that everybody else is taking into consideration, is that we're reading from sources that are obviously flawed, right?
Yeah.
We're living in a world of a place that has had many books burned and all kinds of stuff, and so it's actually better to pay attention to history and the unraveling of these religions and spiritual systems, and see their correlating factors and the ones that couldn't be destroyed, but actually align them to the points in history when certain things happen, than it is just to take books that people are supposedly saying that somehow survived through the history and accepting them right out as something that's innate truth, that it has to be taken as truth. And just because somehow you can align yourself with it through just having some sort of perspective that aligns to it, right? You're on one part of the elephant and you're touching it and you're like, oh, this seems right. That doesn't mean that is not a trick of information that has been infused into our collective. You know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff. I mean, I can get into the details of that. There's a lot of information that we can go over, and different scholars in these areas that we can refer to and have discussions and try to get them on to talk about it, so that we can really iron these things out. But there's a lot of problems in esoteric and Gnostic information. There's stuff that the Gnostics the Gnostic information that was found in Nag Hammadi is not, in my opinion, is not to be trusted. There's entities, there's characters that are considered viziers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where you get the word advisor, and actually pretty much connects to like wizard and stuff like that, but it's a little bit farther of an etymological connection. But these viziers are like the characters like Jafar and Aladdin, and wanted the genie in the lamp, wanted the jinn, wanted to talk to demons, and they were invoking demons. These were bad magicians that were involved in history that created a lot of issues. And you constantly see witches and wizards and viziers, which were magicians, that attached themselves to kings and queens and princes and princesses throughout history, that were giving ill information that was gotten from jinn, that was gotten from demonic entities. In Thoth, in the Thoth green, emerald tablets, we're speaking of this. I mean, it's spoken about in every culture, all the way back as far as you can go, that there's a demonic force, there's a group, and it's looked differently at in the Vedic history. They recognize it and they call it the Naga, right?
Yeah.
And this is where the Nag Hammadi is. This is Nag. This is the snake. Okay, that's why it's called the Nag Hammadi. You know what I mean? This is the snake information, and you have to be as wise as the serpent. You have to understand what kind of trickery that the snake would try to use, because the snake is in essence a piece of this mixture entity, which is mercurial. It's a mercurial entity, and it's allowed to translate and transverse and transit through all energy points. It can talk to hell, God in hell, Pluto, and it can go all the way up and talk to the ultimate God. It's the only one that can do it, right? And it's considered a trickster god. The reason it's considered a trickster god is because it is not under any authority of any level, and that includes humanity. It's under authority of only the highest, and it's got to do different things and different tricks to try to get out the true essence of what you are. That's why it's a trickster, because it can't tell you straight out exactly what's going on. It's Pan from Pan's Labyrinth. It's seeing if you're going to do the right thing in the worst case scenario. It's not going to allow you to just pass through, because you only get the presents if you're a good kid, not if you're a naughty one.
Well, yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's a test. It's a test.
Yeah.
Because if you don't pass the test, then and then you're fighting and creating the whole entire way to pass the test, and it creates these hurdles. Because if everything was good, just like I always said, well, if you didn't have the darkness, you wouldn't know what you wouldn't know what it was. You'd be like, well, the sun's out all the time. Well, what is dark? It's when the sun goes away. The sun goes away, really? Or it could be the opposite. Well, it's dark all the time, and then the sun comes out. Wow, that thing up there is hot. It burns my skin. I mean, and so you got to have the good with the bad, because if you don't have some bad, you wouldn't be striving to be good. And if you didn't have, if everybody was good, or if you didn't have a good, then everybody would just be bad, and you'd just go downhill from there. I mean, what would it be if everybody just says, I don't like you, and then whacked you, and then you're gone, and finding out, well, we would depopulate in a real hurry.
Yep. There's no frame of reference.
Yes.
If you have just plain anything, you have no frame of reference. So you have to have an opposition, and in between those two opposition points, you have a spectrum. And that's because that gives you context, that gives you three-dimensionality, that gives you physicality. You will never have physicality without all of these things. And that means that there has to be a polar opposite. Just like, what's the movie Fragile, right? There had to be a character that was in opposition to this guy that was indestructible. There had to be this weak, you know, just potato chip type of personality, like his bones just break. You know, he's fragile.
Yeah.
Right.
That was glass, not fragile. It was glass. Bruce Willis
Was it
and Samuel L. Jackson. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was one.
I think there was two. I think there was two of them though, right?
Yep.
I don't remember. Yeah.
Yes, there was two movies. The first one, he got locked up, and then the second one, they all died. and not to give it away, but anyway. I didn't see the second one. I just saw the first one, but yeah. Anyways, it's overall understanding, and I think everybody has this understanding. Well, so I got a good one for you. Like this is part of history. Maybe you already know that. Anyway, the South Americans over there, you know, the Mayans or whatever down there, and the Aztecs and stuff. At one point in time, when their civilization was prospering and doing really well, they were their god or whoever it was that was in charge. I can't remember. I'm really bad with names off the top of my head. Yeah. Okay. Yes, that's the guy. Anyway, he said, don't be sacrificing. Don't be a blood, you know, don't kill people. Don't do this, blah, blah, blah. Right. Yep. And somehow or another along the way, then he left. And because he left, things changed. This could have been part of the, you know, changeover at some point. And they decided to, you know, well, we got to have some blood sacrifices, somebody said, to get him back. So they started sacrificing, and I forget how many thousands and thousands of people they would sacrifice a day just to make him come back. And they did, you know, it wasn't pretty sacrifices either. But I'm thinking, wow, you know, so you went from a non-vicious, non-sacrificing to a, you know, let's, you know, kill everybody to get the God guy to come back. And in the end, what happened? Their population went right down the tubes.
Yeah.
And their society, everything collapsed. I mean, literally.
Yes. Because they gave into the jinn. They gave into this is a way of thinking about it. Okay. I'm going to say some stuff here that is we're at the time in the world where people just need to hear it either way. And I apologize ahead of time if this kind of information doesn't pan out well for humanity, but it needs to be said. If you're looking at the facts of what's been going on with this world, is we're living in a place that is a duality, and it needs the opposing factor that we call God or heavenly or good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if that thing has so much power, right? So much power to create all that we are, everything that we see, and beyond that, we can't even fathom. We've never been at the bottom of the oceans, and we've never been so far out of our stratosphere. You know, possibly depending on where the moon's at, if it's still within our stratosphere or not. You know what I mean? We only been so far out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, this place is huge. So what is the power of this thing that is the opposing thing to that in this existence, right? That's a pretty powerful thing if it has to be the opposition to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's not be distorted to think that, you know, it can get away with tricking us and making us believe that it doesn't exist, because that's the greatest trick it ever pulled, is making us believe that it doesn't exist at all, right? The devil's greatest power is to make us believe that it's not even there. Don't worry about it. You know, let things go. This is part of the test. I may be giving you guys a little bit of information on part of the test that maybe you aren't deserving of, and that's not going to be looked at right. You know what I mean? I may have to be judged for even sharing information like this. And I know, you know, this may come out as, you know, oh yeah, there's no way, this is bullshit or whatever. That's fine. You know what I mean? You take on whatever it is that you take on, and I'll have to take on any judgment for even telling you. But these entities have been running this world for a long time because they were the first to sacrifice to even create existence. in the first place. That's why it was God's top dogs that came down, that fell.
Yeah.
Right? This is why Lucifer was considered the most high angel before he fell, because he's the only one that can handle falling into the abyss and to create existence in the first place and to create the divide between himself and God. It's a part of God. It is God.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we're living in this place that is the divide, right? And this is where the name like David and Brahma and Abraham and all this stuff, what it represents, at least in English, how we translate it, this means to branch off. This means to brave things. This is the BRA. This is the DVD. This is the divide. That's why David faced Goliath. He was a brave individual that was smaller and everything. You have to face this world and understand that it's a divide, and you have to be brave against it. Those are the only things that branch off from the central tree of existence, right? And we're living in this. We're living in this reality. So these things that will have you sacrifice are things that had to fall into the abyss and needed to be persecuted and not reconciled by God to allow existence to happen, to allow a divide to happen. But it's not forever. But they're strong, but they're waiting, and the place that the abyss is, the falling, has something to do with magnetism, has something to do with distortion, how magnetism destroys memory, and it's upside down. It's distorted. That's why in a lot of crosses, there's a longer downward piece of the cross. It's not an even cross in most cases. We're trying to establish that perfect balance and make an even cross, but we don't have that right now. What we have is we have fallen, and we're close to the fallen state. I would argue that we're close to the fallen state. We've come down to reconcile, to try to reconcile. That's why if you look into our ancestry, Enoch is, of all of our ancestry, if you're following the Christian religion, right? His name was Enoch. He's a part of all of our ancestry, and he was asked to reconcile them to God. He was asked to bring a message to God to reconcile these fallen, right? And it wasn't able to happen. And if you follow Zoroastrianism, which is basically a follower of Mitra, right? Which is Mithra, right? He's one phase. He's just a phase of the sun. There's a bunch of brothers, and he's a phase of the sun. He's one of them that is, in essence, have sort of a mercurial energy and can translate and come down and can be used as a reconciler, a messiah, a messenger. And he can go down to humans, and he can go down to the fallen, and he can try to reconcile this thing. But the thing is this Mitra character is one of the incarnations of Vishnu, right? And Vishnu is essence. Buddha is also one of these incarnations. And if you look at the medicine Buddha is speaking of a long-term existence that we have, all in interaction with each other between good and evil. He had all the demons, all the evil and good, all in front of him as an audience. And he told them, he said, look, you guys are the medicine for each other. And I have to go away, but I'll be back. I'll be back at the end of time. When I figure out what it is, through your interactions, you will create the medicine bowl. And this medicine Buddha carries that medicine. This is the original Buddha. This is the original idea of Buddha. He carries that medicine bowl, and it's the mixture that we will create over time that will be the medicine for the illness that we are, for those fallen. Because we are all a part of it. But they are we're all a piece of God, but they're a piece that is even farther fallen. And it has an ability, because they understand magic and stuff like that, has an ability to be able to try to manifest in the physical, but they were locked below. If you're following these stories, you'll see, like in the Christian belief system, that in essence, it's Uriel or Gabriel or both, right? Gabriel locked them into the abyss. And Uriel holds the plate of magic that keeps the lock on them. But it's still just magic. It's just understanding how to manipulate frequency and energy. And there's a way out, and there's a way out through vibration, right? So they've figured a way out through tricking man into invoking them through blood sacrifice to bring them to the surface, because there's iron in the blood and there's a magnetism that allows them to unlock the frequency and come to the surface. But the only way that they can stay there is they have to change soul, right? And this is where the selling of your soul comes into place. They're having you sell your soul and change and trade and go into the abyss for them while they come up to the surface. And it's always through blood. And you can see this in the Emerald Tablets. It's always through blood. And you see how when I'm starting to get a little bit deeper in this, it's getting a little bit uncomfortable, because the realization that this is actually a possibility, and I'm sure a lot of people don't even want to believe that this is a possibility, that this is what's happening. But if you look at the details, you'll find out that this is what this sacrificing has always been about throughout history.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and there's been plenty of that. I mean, they're always sacrificing people, especially when there's these big turnovers. And it doesn't have to actually be, we're going to put somebody on the chopping block and, sacrifice them that way. I mean, there's tons of other ways to sacrifice people, in front of people for things that, we just don't really realize what's actually happening. I mean, like they talk about some of these shows, like the halftime shows at the Super Bowl, right? And how that's a ritual going on, and right in front of everybody's faces, everybody's watching and cheering, and it's like, don't you really see what's going on there?
Yeah.
I mean,
they understand magic on a level that is not shared with the public, because they're getting controlled by an entity that has been in control for thousands of years. It actually got invoked a long time ago. And this is, if you really look closely, this is where the Jewish religion, the Christians, all that are actually most likely invoking an evil entity that wants blood sacrifice. And you'll see it that they hide in the temple. They hide in a temple, what they do. And they've been doing it at a certain point. I'm not saying it goes all the way back. I'm saying at a certain point, you see when there was a selling out to the Persians, right? The ancient Iranians, that it looked like a faction of these guys went and sold out another faction. And then they were in captivity for a while, and then they were allowed to come back after a while. And it was given to a different group. It was given to a different group of these guys, and then they got the temple back. And once they did that, they started sacrificing animals and stuff in secret in their temples. And doing blood sacrifice, just like you were saying with the South Americans. And the same kind of thing was happening in the ancient Vedas in India, in Iran, all this with the Zoroastrians. They, Shiva stated that you do not set the sacrifice of something is not killing it and eating it or drinking its blood or anything like that. The sacrificing of it is giving it as a labor, only as a labor to these temples, right? If you had a cow that you were going to sacrifice, you don't kill it, you don't burn it, you don't eat it, and you don't drink it, and you don't give it to the gods or anything like that. You give it to the temple so that they have an actual physical sacrifice in the physical world to use to make sure that they propagate the truth and bring it down the line, to keep these temples going, to keep the information going. That's what it was always about. And then there's these groups that are of the Naga side that want to do the sacrifice, and they're necessary in existence. I want to state that also, is that they are necessary. Although it's evil, what we consider, what a good person would consider evil, someone that doesn't want to partake in things like that. Yeah. They're the opposite of that, but they actually are necessary. And Vishnu steps in to kind of clarify that. And he says, look, they are what they are, though. You know what I mean? But Shiva says, look, you're not going to do that in front of me, because I'm the one that is the judgment, and I destroy what is bad and stuff like that. That's not what was the point. I want to clarify that you're not supposed to be doing that, but you're allowed to do that because you're the duality of this world. This world only exists between these two different types of existence, in essence, right? Yeah. And if there wasn't a group that was trying to push towards progression and murder and sacrifice and stuff like that, we wouldn't have that element in our nature to push us along. A lot of people would have just stayed in tribal factions and, you know, just been vegetarian, agricultural people, and there's not much that they want. They're pleased with very little. And that wouldn't have pushed humanity into the point that we're at with technology. And I feel that the whole point of this existence is God wanted to marry technology with humanity and tribalism at a future point so that you can create an easier existence for humanity to do things that would be that next step, that next level, getting out of this place if we wanted to. You know, exploring the deeper depths of the sea and all that stuff. We wouldn't be able to do that without the technology. So I'm not saying that they're not necessary, but we got to put them in their place. They have to be recognized for what they are, and that they pushed us far enough down the progressive line into technology, and they're not necessary to have so much control anymore. So we'll always have this, you know, negative aspect. There's always going to be the duality and everything, but it doesn't need to have such control over the progression of society and humanity, because we're done with them. They've done their thing, but they'll never let go. That's a part of that existence. That energy is never going to let go. We have to learn to stand up and take a piece of what it is that they have, with some of that gall and that you know, energy that they have of fighting. You know what I mean? And we have to fight back at a certain point. That's a part of humanity becoming a diamond, is you also have to become strong. Yeah,
exactly. You got to become stronger and resist the temptations and stuff like that to fall to that. That's the test, isn't it? That's the test.
Yeah, exactly. We can't just be tribal community and loving. We have to have a righteous enough love to stand up for love's existence, because it's going to get snuffed out by the other side, because the other side doesn't have love. That's not its purpose. It'll just keep going. It'll run itself rampant if we allow it, because it's the opposing energy. So all you have to do is just like sit down with a piece of paper and say, okay, what is on the negative side? So it likes to dominate, creates hierarchies, will kill, will murder, will trick, will do this. You know what I mean? Start labeling all the different words that fit into that category. And then do the opposite, just oppose all those words. And then you'll see, like, this side doesn't have a chance if it doesn't take on some of those, you know, opposites. If it doesn't take on some of those, doesn't learn from the other side of how it gets its positioning and how it had taken over and how it manipulated humanity to do such evil things to each other and how it got us in this position in the first place. Yeah. There was elements that were necessary, but not all elements are necessary, because we're trying to seek that balance. We're not going to continue down that line, but we also cannot just stay in nothing but what we consider the good side of it. You know what I mean? Because that's not going to get us to stop what it is. We can revert back to that. We can come to the balance, but we have to be able to take on some of these other aspects that are a little bit, you know, foreign maybe to our energy, maybe a little bit, you know, not what we want. We're not stepping out of our comfort zone to establish a footing for ourselves and stand up for ourselves.
Oh yeah, well,
right?
it's exactly, because there's people out there that I knew myself that were really good people, but because they were so good and so nice, they were actually naive, and that led them down bad paths because they were so good and so nice. They didn't have that equal.
Yes, exactly. Because evil obviously will, you know, the things we represent as evil and the opposite and all that stuff, negativity and all that, will obviously set up those traps, because that's what it does. That's just what its energy does. It's gonna set up traps for you to fall into, because, you know, to have the duality and have all it is part of the test. You see what I'm saying? Like you have to be tested to see if you're strong enough to not also be a dupe. You know what I mean? And it's great to be good, because now you're starting off from the winning side, no matter what. But the best thing you can do, though, is make sure that you protect the good, because the good is not going to be able to exist. I got children, you know what I mean? And I know a lot of people out there do. And I'm going to fucking protect my children. Excuse my language, but you know what I mean? Well, I know that their existence needs to be propagated into the future, and they're innocent, and all these children are, you know what I mean? They're only not you're only not innocent by proof of what you do, what you fruit in this world, by your actions. You know what I mean? You're not.
I agree with that. See, and it's like somebody was talking about the world is like a pendulum, or and you're talking about the same thing. And as we swing back and forth, we lived in we live in the United States, which is like the freest country in the world. At one point, we had so much freedom, and that pendulum swung way up to as much freedom as you could possibly get, right? Well, we're on the way down, and at some point, just like you were saying, you got to protect your children. People are going to wake up to the fact that, hey, we're not free anymore, and my kids aren't going to be free anymore, and they're going to stand up and they're going to bring that pendulum back up again. Am I right?
Yep. Absolutely. And that's exactly what it is. We're all enactors in the movement and the flow and the attempt to find balance.
Yes, exactly. Because most people they're saying, oh, they're sheeple. Well, they are, and they're just like, oh, I don't care. I don't listen to the news. I don't care. Everything's fine. I go to work and I come home and I go to the store and I sit down, I watch the TV, and life is good and blah, 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 blah. But that's from their own little perspective in their own little world. But once that gets jarred to a certain point, that person starts to wake up. Like a lot of people are even saying in the chat room, the awakening, awake. Well, once they wake up because their world is jarred, they come walking out of the house and say, something needs to change here. I don't like this. My world has been rocked and I need to rock it back.
Yeah. So the fires are getting close. The fires are burning, right? I live in California. Yeah. The fires have been burning all around me. I work up and down California. I've been around every single fire for the last 10 years. Whenever it started, I can't even remember when it started, but I just happen to be constantly around these fires. I mean, they're everywhere, but I'm traveling through these areas and these fires are burning and people's livelihoods are burning down. I mean, we're seeing the alarms being sounded and the trumpets being blown, and it's unfortunate, but we are living in a duality, and there's a time to wake up and see that you gotta take on these challenges. You're going to have to run from the fire. You're going to have to try to combat the fire one way or another. And I have a lot of people that were combating the fires. I ran up into the fires in Boulder Creek. I had my trailer and my truck, and I had family and friends up there and everything. And I helped people get out, get their stuff out, all kinds of stuff, and they were trapping people off. They weren't allowing people up in there. There was a lot of weird stuff going on, but there was guys, friends of friends that were up there, and what they were doing is they had pumps and they had hoses and stuff like that. And they were going and attaching to all these, because a lot of those people have tanks, water tanks. They have their own wells and stuff and water tanks, and they were attaching it and they were putting out fires left and right. And they were complaining about them, saying that they're going to be in the way, but then saying at the same time that they don't have the manpower to put out these fires. Like, you're not even there. So how are they getting in the way? These guys are putting out, saving people's homes and saving people's lives and stuff. What are you talking about? And so that's the thing, is we have to be firemen. We don't need to be police and we don't need to be judges. We at least need to be firemen and put out the fires of what's going on in this world. And a lot of things can be reconciled through, just clever positioning of understanding, and declaring these truths en masse, but it still has to be done right. Whatever the strategy it may be, it still has to be done right. And it's still going to be a fight, because that's what it is in court. You are actually in a fight over the truth. You have to establish these truths. So we're all going to work in different angles, and every single one of you all have a certain energetic compound from God that made you a certain way and come out a certain way, and you have a certain specific aspect to you that is going to do something about this. You asked to be born, whether you remember it or not, and I don't remember it either. I just have a sense. I feel it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That I joined this world at this time, during this pivotal time, to be a part of it in the best way that I can. And part of being here, because it's downward and it's in essence lost. You know what I mean? We don't have memory of it. We have no proof of God.
No,
we have no proof of anything. We have zero proof of what it is that we are, or where we came from, or any of that. We don't know what we do when we dream. We have no idea what is really going on. But one thing is that we can feel our heart. And we know that there's something fucking wrong, and that we got to do something about it. And we know that this place can be better, right?
Yeah.
And whatever it is that God gave us, in essence, in our specific compound to do, we might as well do it before we blink out and then we don't remember even if we were here. And then if we come back, we're not going to remember who we were in the past life, if there is one. But I just put it on the fact that I'm going to probably be coming back here. If it gets worse than what it is now, I'm putting myself in a worse position. Why would I do that?
Oh yeah. You're making your actions today will reflect on you in the future, even though in your next life. Exactly. That wouldn't be good
because I am you.
Oh yeah. Exactly. And so anyway, we got a question or two. Steve's asking.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now what? Please, if we are under the thumb of another, now what?
It's simple, is understanding that there is a entity, an energy force that is of the dualistic in essence. It's opposing to what our natural inclinations are, right?
Yeah.
It has put itself in a hierarchy. It creates systems that are bubbles. Right, we constantly have bubbles that we deal with. Yeah. We have hierarchical systems. We have pyramid structures. Right.
Yeah.
All these things are creating something that's unnatural because it's not seeking level. The most natural thing in this world, and it's arguably the only element that actually exists, and we just give reference to it in its different speeds and turnings, is hydrogen, and that is the essence of water. And we're what burns from our sun and everything. It's all hydrogen, right? So hydrogen on Earth seeks level. It tries to seek level with water, right? So we should most, I think the best way to look at it is we should mostly try to copy things like water. We should try to seek level as much as possible. So if we see hierarchy systems, we shouldn't allow them to be. You can have people in positions of leadership, but a leader is a servant of the people. It should never be at a hierarchical stance to the people. That doesn't make any sense to the water. You know what I mean? Like you see water, and then you see this like weird high rise on the water. You know what I mean? Just sitting there.
Yeah.
Just standing there. You know what I mean? Like that's not natural. We shouldn't have anything like that. And I know people will say, oh yeah, there's waves and all this stuff, and that's the movement from the moon, and the moon is sin, and sin is emotion, and you know what I mean? Mount Sinai and all this stuff. You got to understand that that's an emotional thing. It's always connected to emotion, the moon, right? So having the moon move the waters and stuff like that is just stirring our emotions up because it's volatile what we're living in. But what we're trying to process towards is a state of calm with the waters and the oceans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And whenever that manifests in actual physical reality, that's not the point. The point is that, we want to be at balance in this world. So to confront these entities that basically are stirring up our emotions and trying to create the waves and all this stuff, is that we don't allow them to do that. But people have to understand what is really going on in this world first. And a lot of this is all going to be digging in, understanding these truths, understanding the three-dimensional objects and all their ways to be viewing them, right?
Yep.
Understanding these things that I'm saying. And once you come to those realizations, then you'll see that you don't want a hierarchy. You don't want to give in, no matter what the 7 deadly sins would offer you, right? You don't want to give in to your gluttony. You don't want to give in to your emotions. You don't want to give in to any of these things, because those are actually what create the 7 deadly sins. Sins are your emotions, and then if they get out of control, they become deadly. And there's 7 main ones.
Like
right?
they always say, if you know, a little bit is fine, but then once you have too much, it's just like having a drink. You know,
Yeah.
you have one little drink and that's fine, and you go about your day and blah blah blah. But if you drink a 6-pack, well, and it ain't so good anymore. You know what
exactly.
I mean?
And nothing is, right?
Yeah,
There's nothing it too much of anything can be bad for you.
Yeah.
And obviously some things are worse. But exactly, the emotions that alcohol creates for you are more exaggerated.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
So we want to steer away from exaggerations of emotions, because emotions are there to protect us in the small doses and stuff like that. It's so that we don't just live in a complete numbness or anything like that and just make choices willy-nilly and, oh, I just put my hand on this, or I treat someone like this and, oh, they're crying. Oh, wow. Huh. You know what I mean? You got to feel people. Everything is, you know, we're helping bring ourselves into balance through feeling and all that stuff. So they're definitely necessary, but when they're manipulated and controlled by a social structure that has certain entities, you know, putting the social structure into place, and we're manipulated and controlled our emotions to do things that aren't in our best interest and aren't thought out and play into us actually becoming deadly with our sins, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
Then we're going down the wrong routes, because you're making choices of things with some other outside force manipulating those choices. And then you're maybe partaking too much because you don't have a solution. You don't know what's going on. So you don't have a solution
and therefore the pendulum swings too far one way, then it does the other to balance itself out. Yeah.
Yep. And like I said in the beginning, you either splat against the wall or you bounce off and you try to refigure yourself and work your way back to balance, right? So some people kill themselves with drugs. Some people kill themselves with eating too much and having heart attacks and doing this. And there's all different ways that we end up taking on these sins and then going towards the deadly end of it, and it ends up ending us, or we turn it around at a certain point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so many of us will go through a lot of those to try to find our balance point. But, you know, we're coming to a time with, you know, kind of getting back to Saturn and Jupiter, we're coming to a time where, you know, those benefic points that Jupiter was giving, how did we react to those presents that were just given without, you know, us earning it or whatever? How did we react to that? Did we also return the beneficness, right? If that's a word, you know, were we beneficial back? Did we share that abundance? What did we do with it? Because we're going to get judged by that. All those things. And it's going to be different for all of us, because all of us actually have a different karma structure. You know what I mean? That's another thing about the word karma, is it's not really understood properly. The karma for evil is different than it is for good. And it's different for every different type of energy type that there is, because you have a duty, a certain thing that you're supposed to be karmically or carnally doing here. And if you're not going that correct path, then it has repercussions for that. So something that's evil, the reason why it doesn't get judged the same way and doesn't get taken out of its position and stuff like that is because it was supposed to be evil. That's the point that people miss. You know what I mean? Its job was to be the dualistic opposite.
Well, yeah, and you're never going to turn it, you know, the other way, because that's what its job is.
Exactly, and then it's going to obviously get repercussions for not being what it is.
So I guess you must have just answered Steve's question. He said, so he didn't answer my question. What are we going to do if the entities are at the helm? Well, then that just tells me that the entities are are supposed to be there. If they're at the helm for doing whatever the destruction or guiding down the wrong path, that means at some point in time, they're gonna get turned around by the opposite. Correct?
Yeah, exactly.
They're
it's
here for a
about you
purpose.
not getting tricked. Exactly.
Yes,
It's about
yes.
you making sure that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. So what's going to end up happening is no matter what, the whole process is to get something out of us. The whole process is to get the diamonds. So the diamonds are going to come about, but that side needed to be at the helm for whatever period of time through that process to put the pressure on, and that pressure makes the diamonds. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
it depends on how you
absolutely.
react, because not everything turns into a diamond. So I can't tell you anything very specific. I'm not trying to say the very specific, because it's not so specific. There's a process that's specific, but how you react and if you're going to become a diamond is all dependent on what it is that your energy is in the first place and your reaction to the variables that are on the outside, your environment, putting that pressure on you. You see what I'm saying? So it's a much more general way of looking at it, but they are not going to be in that position forever, because the process has to end at some point. And what I'm arguing is that we're coming to the end of that process.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you can see
you're,
it. And
you're going to make it through the gate or not.
And I've said before too, like when you come to the end of winter, it gets really bad. We always seem to have, oh, well, it's, March and we had, a foot of snow. We didn't have a foot of snow all winter. And then, well, summer's ending. And what happens? It was cold as can be. I mean, it was 10 degrees out here for days and days. And then all of a sudden, just like that, it got to be, 45, 50 for the last week. And it's December. And so it's these big swings back and forth. One day I got my freaking, heavy jacket on, and the next day I got a light sports coat on, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? And it's that back and forth, and eventually one or the other season is going to take over. And then you're gonna have snow all the time, or you're gonna have sun all the time, and it's going to be back and forth. But there's always that transition period that I think you're talking about. And these are the signs in the sky that correlate that transition through the frequency of the planets aligning.
Yes, exactly. And there's going to be a judgment. So mainly this one is a judgment. And there's a character that's called a chronicrator, right? So this character, some people refer to it as, what our higher self or things like that. And I don't tend to think of it that way, because I believe that our higher self of all of us is we're all God, right?
Yes.
The chronicrator is a son of God that happens to be already previously balanced. So it's a certain child of God. And I tend to think of the God as not being really of a specific sex. It's kind of a hermaphroditic character, and we can get into that maybe in another talk or whatever. But it has a child, and it's usually referred to as a woman. It's like Mother Mary, and then it has a child that is a masculine form of it, but it has feminine characteristics, like it loves all humanity, like it's its children, right? Like Jesus has long hair. It's a very Saturn type of thing. It wears that's why judges wear that long gown, right? This is all, old information. I'm sure a lot of people have heard this, but it's Saturnial, and it's a judgment character that wears this long gown like a woman, right? So it's feminine, but it's very masculine in what it does. It's very judgmental and can execute, right? That's why you're the executive officer when you're the president. You execute the laws. It's a masculine type thing, but it's a feminine entity, and it's usually associated with the color black and darkness and stuff like that. And it's considered the matrix or the womb in the first place. and we're all its children. And it represents itself in the physical world as a male with feminine attributes, some feminine attributes, but in the opposite, in the spiritual world, it's a female with masculine attributes, warlike female, and it's called a virago, right? And this is where the word Virgo or the virgin comes from, is from this virago character. So if you look up virago, it'll tell you, they keep on trying to change it in like Wikipedia and all this stuff, but you know, I keep all the etymology and all the stuff, you know, the information, but it goes back to even Eve, and it's about a female warrior. And so you'll see the symbology of this female warrior over and over and over and over again, especially in the Americas, but through all the mythological characters and everything. So
yeah, like
California,
Wonder Woman and Xena and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And you can. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, you know, I mean, that stuff has come out a lot more lately. I mean, if you turn on any of these shows, it's all these women figures kicking butt on, you know, everything. And it's like, well, you know, that's almost kind of impossible, but they're really portraying that lately as that masculine woman character.
Yes, because this goes back a long time, and they actually been predicting it for a long time. Symbolically, they've been predicting it in America. And so this goes back to John Dee and Sir Francis Bacon information, but also Califia and what California is named after, right? Do you know the story of Califia?
No, I do not.
So there was a guy named Montalvo, a writer, a Spanish writer, and he wrote during the time the Muslims were in control of Spain, and they were, you know, a caliphate there. So he writes of a mythological female, right? They're Amazon women, right? And so they're black. They're black in the story, right? They're dark women, and they give birth to nothing but an asexual reproduction of themselves. As when they get to a certain age, they just give a birth to themselves again, and then they raise themselves, right? And this ties into a lot of these stories and everything. And they governed over an island that was filled with gold, and they rode on griffins, right? And so every once in a while, one of them would birth a male. And specifically when Califia, the queen of these Amazon women, these women warriors, gave birth to a certain male, she didn't feed it to the griffin, and she kept it, right? And we can go into the details of why that it was necessary and what it means symbolically to the story of humanity, and why a male was even ever necessary in the whole story of it, right? Yeah. So this symbolic character is also referred to as Athena, right? And Athena was the spear shaker. She would point her spear, she would take it up, and she would eye down the spear at her enemy, and then she would shake it at her enemy, and she says, "You're false." You know what I mean? Like, you're not good, and my aims are at you, and I will destroy you. You know, basically representing the truth, but with a warrior spirit, but through a female. So it's this feminine warrior. So Minerva is also a representation of the same thing, and you'll see her on the California flag. Minerva is standing there, sitting there like a giant, right, with a bear, a grizzly bear that looks tiny at her feet, basically. You know what I mean? Like this tiny little grizzly bear, and she's standing there, this huge thing standing on the California coast as Minerva, showing that same symbology. So the story that was written by Montalvo was sought after and believed to be somewhat true, right? That it was symbolically characterizing some sort of innate truth in humanity, that there's something like that. And so they were seeking for this gold. And then when the Spanish came up the California coast, they first went up into Baja California underneath, and they went up and they went up and they went up, and they didn't find an end yet. And there was some information that maybe it attached to an inland lake and stuff like that. So it might have all attached at one time, and it probably definitely did all the way into the central valley of California and made this huge island. that was from San Francisco Bay Area all the way down to Baja, California, right? So the Spanish then turned around, went up the coastline, and came up over San Francisco Bay and down into the Bay Area. And they said, this is it. This is that island. This is the island of Califia. So they decided to call it. They went actually, I think, back down and then landed in the Monterey Bay and then established a first tiny bit of a capital there. And then they went into San Jose, the heart of Silicon Valley, and they made the first establishment and capital, the first official capital of California. And Villa Montalvo, a home that was created by one of the governors to represent Montalvo, was established in the hills, the Saratoga Hills of the Silicon Valley, in remembrance of Montalvo and his writings. And that's what California was named after, was this Virago character, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And the United States itself is actually a manifestation of this Virago character. That's why they have that warrior, mixed warrior goddess on the Capitol building, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What they're saying is that in essence, we're seeking perfection, all things on earth, and humanity is also. And that eventually, when things get to a point where it perfects itself for the environment that it's in, like lizards and stuff like that, they end up becoming asexual. And they come to a perfect state with their environment, and they don't need to have a male, in essence, to go and challenge the environment to bring back diversity and become better, because they've already perfected what it is to live in that environment. And humans' environment is the entire world. And so to perfect that takes a longer process than some of these lizards and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we're learning. It's just a symbol and a sign of learning perfection in a way. It has many meanings. Just like I said, there's 33 ways of thinking about everything, every dynamic in this world. But that's just something to take into consideration, is that there's this energy and this entity that is an archetype, a very heavy, strong energy here that has to do with a virago, a virgin in a way, because, see how it didn't need a male to produce the male? It didn't need something. It was some sort of mutation that happened within it, right? And it was a warrior female, because it was basically both male and female. That's why it could birth, only give half of itself, the masculine part, out, because it had it within it, right? And so that's a symbolic form of what the all is, the God of this world and everything like that. So in essence, these esoteric occult depictions want to lean more towards it being a feminine thing, because it gives birth. You see what I'm saying? But it's not just a feminine. It also has these masculine attributes. And then it had to create a divide and be able to have experiences and search out variables that would cause it to have conflict, and then kind of mutate and get used to those things. And that's why it's necessary to have two sexes, right?
Yep.
Humanity is adapting to the world, in essence.
Yeah. I agree with that. But well, you know what? I hate to say this, but we've been talking a long time, and this is about the longest show I've ever done. But it's the most interesting. No, this is the most interesting show I've ever done, too. Holy cow, I've learned more. I got a whole notepad full of stuff I wrote down. And so I tell you what, this was very interesting. You'll have to come back again, and we'll continue on where we left off here, hopefully before the 20th, 21st, when that whole thing aligns or something like that. Would you want to do that sometime then? We'll finish this off, because this has been really crazy information, and with the frequencies, and I learned so much about what all this means, because the symbols and your zodiac signs, and I never quite understood all that, but now you really made it make a lot more sense, I tell you.
There's a lot of detail to. different aspects that fold into it. And there's the other information that I would like to get into about some of the more historic details and some of the stuff that was happening in the present. And so we can go into that next time, you know.
Yeah,
that'll be good.
Absolutely. And I want to thank everybody for coming. Man, we had a pretty good crowd here. Trina showed up, Lady Spitfire, Kaz Hawk, Centurion Sun, let's see, Wise April Fool. Let's see, anybody else I missed? There was a whole bunch of other people here. People have been coming in and out. Jill Jarrett, Michelle D, Christy Schaefer. Oh, Joyce, are you serious? Let's see. Oh, we've had a few others here back. I go back far.
Well, I just like to say that, you know, I obviously hold you all in my heart. I love you all. And hopefully I wasn't too weird, as the first time people have probably heard my voice, and, you know, without being, you know, in the comment room trying to type up some little short, you know, info on this. Hopefully I wasn't too weird for people.
Oh, they're all putting up little hearts. Great show. Great show. Absolutely loved hearing from you, Giant. That was Trina. Kaz Hawks, lots of hearts. Everybody's like, this was wonderful. This is really good. This is really good. So everybody's giving you a thumbs up on this, and lots of love. So it's all
well. Thank
good.
you guys. Much love. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Well, okay, let me get rid of this stop share, and we're back to normal screen. And I want to say thanks to everybody. We'll be back probably. I'm not sure if we're going to come back this week again sometime. I got somebody else lined up. If that works all through, I'll be on again once more. And don't forget to catch Adronymous 7. They'll be on Friday night. And I see we got Scotty Boy. That's who I forgot. And Tanya Rose, she's there too. She showed up. And Ed Hagel, yeah, too. So see, we had a lot of people watching. They were just kind of silent and listening. But anyway, then we got a big show with a big surprise on Saturday. So you got to check that out. So we got a big fun-filled week ahead. So thanks, awesome. Giant, for coming. And
thank you, brother.
We always say, be the frequency you want to receive. And now we know what frequency is all about and what you're going to receive, right? So
yeah, we'll hope we figure it out, right?
So love you all. Thanks.
All right. Love you all.